Okay, so your TMO greetings, we're just giving it a minute for people to join in. If you have any issues with the sound or the images, let me know in the chat room. We're going to put a link in the chat room while we're setting it up. Okay. Okay, so your TMO greetings, yet I say we thank you once again for tuning in. I'm Odwirafo Kwesi Radnehmbata Akan Odwirafo of Aquamumine Amaruka Etifimu, the Akwamu Nation in North America within Ojiraman, the purified nation, Afurakani, Afurai Kaitni people, African Black people in the Western Hemisphere. So this particular live stream, we want to go into detail on this subject matter about Ankh, IANKH, YOKE, and YOKE, the Kamiti, Black Egyptian, meaning Kamiti, ancient Kemet, the Black nation, the Kamiti origin of the term yoga. We'll also touch on the origin of the term Chakra or Chakra, which comes from ancient Kemet, and Ghanid as well. But we want to focus on this because we teach a meditation instructor certification course, the SUSU course. And in the process of that, when we certify people so they can go out and conduct meditation sessions, which is called SUSU, the ancient term for meditation, we also incorporate within those lessons, within that training, this proper origin, Trustrorical origin of the terms yoga and chakra, and their etymological and cosmological roots in ancient Kemet, thousands of years before the pseudo-fake religions of Hinduism and Buddhism ever existed. Because the whites and their offspring, through the Sanskrit language and Proto-Indo-European, they have stolen the term, co-opted it for themselves, and pretended like it came from them, which of course it did not. So we wrote a book about that, went into detail about it, and we've also incorporated that book in our anthology. And this is what we're going to go over today. So, so this is the book, ODWIRASEM, Trustrorical Anthology, and it's a 600-page book, 8.5 by 11 encyclopedia size. If you look on the back, you see there are 12 book covers. So I've published 31 books to date, and 12 of them that deal with Trustrorical information, cosmology, ritual practice, and so forth. We incorporated all 12 in one large volume. One of those books is this one. And this is the one we'll be dealing with today. So you can see it. Ankh, the origin of the term yoga. So this book is available on the link that you see on the screen right now. And for our subscribers, since you're a subscriber on our channel, you get an automatic 30% discount. So when you go to the link now, you can get that discount. You can also split your payment into 4. So you can just simply pay $13 to place the order for the book today. So, but let's get into the book. What you see here is actually from the book. The front cover of the book is here. So one of those 12 books is Ankh, the origin of the term yoga, KASA, origin and nature of the chakra. And within that text, we have the Meduten Toro, the hieroglyphs that show the actual origins. So let's look at it. Our book is the first to prove that. So prior to us publishing this a number of years ago, and then we expanded on the book last year, back in the spring when we put forth the anthology, we added more information, new information from the previous version. And this is the new version and so forth. So, but prior to us publishing this information, nobody was aware that the term Ankh or the term Kara, quote unquote, chakra, came from ancient Kemet. They always assumed it came from Sanskrit or Proto-Indo-European, which is totally inaccurate. Now that we put the information out, some people are incorporating it into their work as well. So hold on a second. All right. So this book is comprised of two separate texts in one volume. The first half of the book is Ankh, the origin of the term yoga, Ankh, Ankh, and we'll explain that. And then the second half is KASA, the origin and nature of the chakra. We're going to focus today on the first half. So first and foremost, you see the Ankh. This particular Ankh is from the tomb of Tutankhamen. And then you have the Akuaba doll in the Akan language and culture. That is a fertility doll. It's a talisman, a ritual talisman used by women to stimulate the energy of the womb to give birth and so forth. But there's also a funerary function for the Akuaba as well. But we continued using the Ankh as the Akuaba thousands of years later, and that continued into the hoodoo tradition in North America. Akan people originated in ancient Khanit, which is ancient Nubia. We migrated west a couple of thousand years ago and reestablished the Akana Empire, which is the ancient empire of Ghana. About 1,000 years later, we migrated further south and reestablished the Akana or Akan Empire in the forest belt where Ghana and Ivory Coast are today. And then hundreds of years after that, some of those Akan people were taken from those regions and forced into the Western Hemisphere during the Musuo Kessie, the Great Perversity, the enslavement era. And this is how Akan people ended up in North America. And we continued Akan ancestral religion under the Akan word Undu, which means medicine from roots, trees, and plant life. And it also means become heavy with the spirit through spirit possession and spirit communication. Undu came to be pronounced hoodoo. And that is the Akan tradition in North America. And the hoodoo doll baby, when you see a hoodoo doll, and in hoodoo, it's called a hoodoo doll baby. It's the same form as the ancient Akuaba, which is the same form as the ancient Ankh. So it is a cultural continuity across continents and across millennia. But let's get into it. When you look in the Akan language, and we do comparisons to show that there's a cultural continuity, when you look at the different divinities, you see them holding the Ankh, Tahuti, the deity of divine wisdom, holding the Ankh. Ra, sitting in the boat of the Aten, Atenit, the sun, holding the Ankh. Het Heru, holding the Ankh. The female divinity of sensuality and creativity and so forth. And then you have Ma'at, the female divinity of divine law and balance. She's holding the Ankh and so forth. So it's the sacred talisman that projects the energy of that particular divinity. It's also used to enliven and vitalize the spirit of the deceased individual. So you see the Per'a, misnomered Pharaoh, but Per'a being reinvigorated, his spirit being reinvigorated in the spirit realm by Anpu, by placing the Ankh at his nose and so forth. Same thing with the deity Ptah, utilizing the Ankh as a talisman, the same function. So it's about bringing life or enlivening or vitalizing the individual. So you have two different major spellings of Ankh that we want to get into now. If you look in the Akan language, and this is from the Akan language dictionary, an entry from the Akan language dictionary, the term onkwa means life, vitality. This is a word spoken every single day in Akan language. Even when someone sneezes, instead of saying God bless you, in Akan language, they will say onkwa, which means life. They're bestowing life upon you and so forth. Onkwa in Akan is Ankh in Ejikemet, meaning life. And that also proves not only that we're speaking the same language, but we have the actual vocalization, proper vocalization of the term. So you see the symbol here, and it's spelled with the wavy water line, the up, down, wavy line, which is the N sound. That's the sound for the letter N, the N. And then you have the dark circle, which is a siev or strainer, and that's the K sound. So you have N, K, Unk, or Ankh, and so forth. Now, So then we get into some linguistics. So there are different ways to pronounce the ah sound in Kemet. Certain symbols represent the ah sound, and sometimes the ah is also in different dialectical variants pronounced as eh. So for example, the term as we see right here, to know, to understand. Then you look in the Coptic dialectical variant, the Coptic dialect, when you see COPT, the Coptic dialect of the language of ancient Kemet is the version of the language that came into being about 2,000 years ago at the end of the dynastic period. So just like we have people pronounce words differently, for example, in British English and American English, they will pronounce words slightly differently because the dialect changed, even though they speak, it's mutually intelligible. Anybody from America can understand anybody from England speaking English, but American English and British English, slightly different in certain pronunciations. So the same thing here, we have different dialectical variants. The late period dialect is the Coptic dialect, and you see in the Coptic dialect, becomes ayeme, ayeme. You also have at in the ancient dialect, at. And then in the Coptic dialect, you have a number of different variations. And we spell them out here. At becomes iyo, iyohe, iyat. So instead of at, it becomes iyat, iyat, I-A-H. This is in Coptic right here. This is the I, A, and H, big characters in Coptic. In the regular Latin alphabet, it's I-A-H here. So at in the late dialect becomes iat. It also is iyo, ioi. And you have different variations of that. So at becomes iat. Becomes iam or iame. You have the same representation in the Akan language. The term afunu, afunu, or afuru, meaning belly or inner abdomen, is also pronounced and written yafunu, yafunu, a and ya. The only difference is you put an e before an a. When you put e, a together, that's iya, iya. And that's very often written with the character y, but the y is simply e and a together. That's iya, iya, and so forth. So afunu becomes yafunu, which is really e afunu, iya, yafunu. The same thing happens with the word Ankh. There's a dialectical variant of Ankh where you have the I in front of the A and it becomes I, Ankh, or IANKH, IANKH, and that's very important. But first, when they talk about the origin of the term yoga, they will say it comes from the Proto-Indo-European root yug. Yug meaning to link, to join, and unite. And yug in Proto-Indo-European, when we talk about Proto-Indo-European, they're talking about the proposed origin language family from which all the Indo-European languages come from Sanskrit to Proto-Germanic, and later Latin and Greek and Spanish and French and Portuguese and so forth, and later English and so forth. But the origins going back over 4,000 to 5,000 years, they'll say it's the Proto-Indo-European language family, the parent of all of the languages that eventually manifested in Europe and into India, because the Europeans, the whites in offspring, left Europe and went into Western Asia and so forth, into India. And, they invaded Northern India and so forth. So this is why it's called Indo-European, stretching from Western Europe all the way into India where they invaded. So in the Proto-Indo-European dialect or family, language family, they'll say that yug, meaning to join, to link, or unite, is the origin of yuga in Sanskrit, yuk, and so forth. They'll say there are two variations, yug with a G and yuj with a J. And they'll say also that's the origin of the English term yoke or yoke. Now, let's look at the linguistics. There's a linguistic device called an infix. Now, we're familiar with a prefix and a suffix, but there's also a linguistic device called an infix, which is placed inside of a word. Of course, a prefix is before a word, a full word, a suffix is at the end, but an infix is in the middle. What is an infix? A bound morpheme that interrupts a morpheme. So that's what an infix is. So let's look further. In a few language families, like Austronesian, infixes are abundant. In most Indo-European languages, they are rare or non-existent. English and most modern Indo-European languages do not have any. But then they say Proto-Indo-European had one infixing verb stem marker, ne, alternating with n, so it's ne is one way to say it, and another way to say it is n, so they drop the n sound in the middle of a word. They give the example. For example, the root yug, link, join, or yoke. The present imperfect finite stems are yuneg and yunk, and what you have is the original is yug. If you drop the infix in between yug, you have yu, ne, g, which is yuneg, or yu, n, g, yunk. So when you look in Wikipedia, for example, or any etymological, dictionary and so forth, when they're talking about the etymology of yoga, they'll say the Sanskrit word yoga has the literal meaning of yoke from a root yuj or yug, meaning to join, to unite, or to attach. As a term for a system of abstract meditation or mental abstraction, it was introduced by Patanjali in the 2nd century BC. So when they talk about yug or yug, link, join, yoke, and so forth, and another variation is with the J. When you have the infix is yunk, to link, join, and unite. They'll say it's Proto-Indo-European, but that's, of course, a lie. Now, let's look at the origin of the term. The term Ankh means life, to live upon something, life. Ankh. In the Coptic dialect, here you see this symbol in the beginning is aw, so that's Ankh. Of course, in Akan, we still say onkwa, life. So different variations and spellings of the term Ankh. And then you also have Ankh as a title. The feminine version, Ankhet or Ankhit, the living one, the name of a goddess. Then you also have Ankh, which is also used as an oath, the oath of life and so forth. You're putting your life, just like today in English, we'll say, if we're swearing to something, someone will say, this is on my life. That goes all the way back to ancient Kemet, when the word Ankh or life means an oath. I'm putting this on my life that this is true. I'm taking an oath. You also have Anku. The U makes it plural. So life, like you have one individual life or a group of individuals and their life and so forth. We don't say life in the plural. We don't say lives, as we say lives, or we say the life of the entire group and so forth. That's still a plural in that context. Ankh is singular, Anku is plural. And let's look at it. Goat, any small domestic animal. And look at the way it's spelled. You still see the wavy line for the n, the dark circular CF or strainer for the ka, nk. But the determinative symbol is a goat. It's a domesticated animal, an animated life form. It shows the goat walking, so it's an animated entity, meaning it's a vital life form. Ankh, living. So Ankh is life, Ankh is living. Ankhu, plural, so living beings, a living thing. In the plural, Ankhu. This is the same from another hieroglyphic dictionary, the Mark Vigus hieroglyphic dictionary. Ankh, they have the symbol of the Ankh, and then the little domesticated goat. So one is the Budge's dictionary, which is a very popular hieroglyphic dictionary. The Mark Vigus dictionary you can download online is another very popular hieroglyphic dictionary. But they have the same terms and so forth. Now here's the important point. There's a variation of Ankh. Here you see ANKH, Ankh. Here's the variation. You have two A's, A, and then ANKH. Here, the Ankh portion is the ANKH, is the Nkh or Ankh. The extra A with the dot above it, in this particular dictionary, when they have an A with the dot above it, it is referencing this symbol right here, which is the reed. There's a reed that grows out of the ground, the plant, the reed plants and so forth. In this dictionary, when you see a reed plant, it's transliterated as an A, but they put the dot over the A. That is pronounced I. So instead of Ankh, you have I and then Ankh. I and Ankh together is IANKH, IANKH, IANKH. And in this entry here, the N is short for Nefer Ka Ra. An ancient Pera or pharaoh from early dynasties. This is from the pyramid text, the Meru text or the pyramid text of Nefer Ka Ra or Pepi II. So within the pyramid text, if you go into the pyramid of Pepi and you look on the walls, you will see this spelling of Ankh, IANKH. And in this context, they were talking about in the plural, so it's IANKHU, but the root is IANKH, IANKH. You see the reed first, and then the symbol of the Ankh itself, so it's IANKH, and so forth. So now we have the term IANKH in ancient Kemet, going back to the pyramid texts. The pyramid texts are the oldest, so far unearthed, religious compositions ever unearthed in the world. There are no texts anywhere in the world that are religious compositions that are older than the Meru text or the pyramid text. So, in the oldest text yet unearthed in the world, you will find IANKH, IANKH. Nothing's older than that. Now, two variations of the spelling of Ankh. You have the symbol itself, and sometimes you can just put the symbol itself, and when people would read the Medutan sort of the hieroglyphs, and we have a two-part course on how to read and write the language and hieroglyphs of ancient Kemet. And of course, we compare the language with the languages of the Akan people, Yoruba people, and others in contemporary Africa to prove that we're speaking the same language and it's unbroken. So we have a two-part course. We'll show you on the link you see on the screen. When you go to that link, you'll see our book, but you also see our courses on how to read and write the language. So one spelling of Ankh is the symbol of the Ankh itself, or you can put the symbol of the Ankh itself and the N sound, the wavy line, the little circle, which is the Kus sound, so that's Nkh. The rolled papyrus here is a determinative symbol. And you also have this little rope is the U symbol, so that's plural in this context, Ankhu. But this is the determinative symbol, which is the kneeling, shrouded individual. It's showing that it's not just a regular living person, but since it's a shrouded individual, in this context, it's showing that it's the spirit of an ancestor or an ancestress. If they weren't shrouded, they're just a life, a walking, living person. But when they're shrouded like that, typically it means it's a person, but this is a deceased individual, It's an ancestor or an ancestress. This is the spirit of an Afurakani or Afurakani African human being. So it's a life, the life of a person. Ankh. That's one spelling. And when you look at the term Sahu, the term for a spirit body, the spirit form of the person, you'll see it's spelled Sa, but then you have that determinative symbol as well. But that's one spelling of Ankh, a living being, a life, talking about a human being. Then you have the other version, Ankh, the symbol, and the goat. That's an animated life form. Anytime you see a goat walking, instead of a plant, which is stationary and it's not animated, here you're showing, well, this is a life, but it's an animated life form. That can apply to us as well because we're animated as well. So sometimes you can show that symbol of the goat as well, just showing life in general, but talking about an animated life form. Sometimes it's specifically talking about a goat or some other animal, but sometimes in general, just saying this is the difference between an animated life or an inanimate life form like a stone or, mineral or a plant. So the goat, small domesticated animal, small cattle, and so forth. So two different major spellings. Now we look at the word for spirit body, and this word pulls everything together. Sahu, the spirit body. The horizontal bolt is the S sound. This symbol right here is actually the forearm with an open palm like this. That's the Ah sound. Then next to it is the twisted flax. It looks like a rope twisted, but it's a twisted flax. That's the H sound. So that's S-A-H, Sa. Sometimes it's Sa, sometimes it's spelled Sahu. Instead of saying my spirit body, we would say my Sa or my Sahu. So it's S-A-H. But then you have the two determinative symbols that are not spoken. They're just there to point to the fact that this is referencing something specifically. Sa means the spirit body, but it's also showing that, number one, this particular spirit body is animated. So it's an ancestral spirit that's animated, that moves, that can operate. You can communicate with this spirit when you pour libation. You can communicate with that spirit when you play ritual drums or ritual chant or ritual prayer. The spirit can come down and possess people and get inside the body of someone. This is an animated life. So you see the animal, Ankh, the animated form. But what kind of spirit body? Is it actually an animal spirit? Is it a plant spirit? Is it a mineral spirit? Or is it the spirit of a human being? They add the human being to show that it is the spirit of a human being, but it's an animated spirit. The spirit is lively, full of energy, it's animated and so forth. The spirit we can communicate with, we can get direction from, we get guidance from our ancestresses and ancestors. We pour libation and give offerings and they give us guidance and so forth. So it's an animated human spirit, that kind of Sa. So in the term Sa, we have the symbols for SAH, as we said, followed by the determinative Medutu or symbols, the animal, and the ancestral spirit, and so forth. So both of these definitions of Ankh, both of these spellings of Ankh are valid. They point to different things and so forth, but these are two different definitions. Now, here's the key. Notice that in the term Ankh, with the determinative of the goat, the animal has an Ankh around its neck. This Ankh around its neck became known and pronounced as an IANKH, IANKH, or yoke around its neck. Ankh and yoke are the same word, and they're also the same symbol in ancient Kemet. This goes all the way back to the Meru text, the pyramid text. We're talking about the word Ankh And this right here, this symbol right here is translated as Ankh, but also in the pyramid text, one of the variations of the dialectical variations is IANKH, IANKH. So when you see the symbol right here, you see IANKH. And what does the animal have around its neck? It has an IANKH, a yonk, or an ankh in the form of a yoke. But the English word yoke didn't exist yet. The Proto-Indo-European word yunk, yunek, or yunk didn't exist yet. Why? Because they stole it from this term, yonk. It means life, but it also means a yoke. Why does the ankh mean life, but why does it also mean yoke? Because cosmologically, the Ankh is a life force talisman that pulls together the Ba, the divine living solar fire energy that surges through our system, and the Ka, the soul. The spirit and the soul, the Ba and the Ka on the feminine side by Ed and Kayet, are fused together by the Ankh in the spirit body, in our spiritual anatomy. So the Ankh literally links the spirit and the soul, the Ba and the Ka. That's its cosmological function. So it is a yoke literally in our spiritual anatomy, and it's shown as a yoke here. It unites the lower body, the neck is the gateway, and the head is the heavenly region for us spiritually. The head is the heavenly region, the neck is the gateway, and the body is the earthly region, and so forth. And you put that Ankh around the neck, it unites the heaven and earth, and so forth. It's a cosmological reality. So when the whites and their offspring say that Yunk, or Yunek in Proto-Indo-European became Yug and Yoka in Sanskrit, and later Yoke in English, and it means to link, join, unite, they can't tell you why it means that. All they can say is when you say Ya, Yunk, that means to link, to join, unite. Why doesn't Boule mean to link, join, unite? Why doesn't Sisa mean to link, join, unite? Why does it have to be the sounds Ya, meaning to link, join, unite? They can't tell you why, because they stole it from our language and our culture and our religion and cosmology. They heard us say Yonk means to yoke, join, unite. So they started saying Yonk means yoka and yoke to join, unite. If we would have said Buli means to link, join, unite, then they would be talking about they practice the, tradition of Buli, and it means to yoke or join or link or to unite. But since they stole the term from us, they have the sounds yonk, yoke, and they also have the meaning yoke, but they can't tell you why. We can tell you why because we have it in sound, but we also have it pictorially. We have the ankh or the yonk itself. It's around the neck of the domesticated goat, but that goat is also used in the spelling of the word for spirit body, sa, sahu, and the entire cosmology revolves around linking the ba, the divine living solar energy that animates every aspect of our being. That ba spirit unites with the ka, the soul, the divine consciousness. And when you fuse together the ba and the ka, the spirit and the soul through the Ankh talisman and function, then you're bringing that spiritual anatomy together. Hinduism doesn't have that. Buddhism doesn't have that. Their language doesn't have that. They don't have that cosmology within their culture because they stole it from our people and fragmented it. So they can't tell you what the word yoke or yonk, what its real origin is, because they stole it from us. And our book, we're the first to show that, to prove it linguistically, etymologically, and cosmologically. Before we published this, no other book had that understanding. They didn't understand that the animal, the Ankh, the domesticated animal, had the Ankh around its neck in the form of an Ankh or yonk or yoke. And they didn't know that the dialectical variant of Ankh being Iyonk in the pyramid text, specifically the pyramid text of Neferkara Pepi II, was there. We put all that information together. Now when you see the deities holding an Ankh, you have a different and more full perspective. If you look at an Ankh, as a matter of fact, if you take, for example, as we know, if you take a nail and you wrap a wire around the nail and you add both ends of the wire to a 9-volt battery, once the current moves through the wire and it, circulates encircles the nail and so forth, it creates an electromagnetic field. And then that nail becomes magnetized. We learned that when we were kids. So you wrap that nail up in wire, put it to the battery and so forth, the current moves through, and then that nail becomes magnetized, and you can use that nail to pick up paper clips and so forth, because that electromagnetic energy whipping through a circle generates an electromagnetic field. There are experiments, and you can look on this on YouTube, where people have taken copper wire, placed it, formed it in the form of an Ankh, and then took the two ends of the wire and put it, attached them to a battery. Once the current moved through the copper wire and through the loop of the Ankh, that little wire that's in the form of an Ankh became an electromagnet, and they were able to pick up paper clips and so forth. So when the energy surges through the shaft portion and then whips through the circle, it creates an electromagnetic field, and now it is magnetized, and you can pick up, metal objects. When you look at this, anytime you see a divinity holding the Ankh, whatever is the nature of the energy complex of that divinity, that energy surges through that Ankh talisman, it goes through the shaft, whips through the circular portion, and then it generates an electromagnetic field that's characterized by the energy of that specific divinity. If it's a fire divinity, the energy that's moving through the Ankh is a fiery energy complex. If it's a water divinity, the energy moving through the Ankh that's being held by that deity, they're wielding that water energy. If it's an atmospheric divinity, the same thing. So every time you see a deity holding the Ankh, when they use that Ankh to, enliven or Ankh an individual, they're projecting their energy through this amplification device. That's what's going on. Just like we use the Akuaba doll in the Ankh tradition in the same fashion. So you see that here, when you see the individual standing in front of Tahuti in this context, or any other divinity in that same posture, what you're looking at is the dua posture. And when you see them doing this, this is not just praising. What it is a ritual provocation. You can have a ritual convocation. You can have your hands like this and you can receive energy. But when you turn your hands this way, you're literally projecting energy. No different than a martial artist who learns how to move some ki or chi energy. And by the way, the term ki is a title of Ra in ancient Kemet, talking about divine living energy. And the same thing in the Fang tradition of the people of Cameroon and Gabon. The term ki means life force energy. Ki is a title of Ra in ancient Kemet. Kit is a title of Ra'et in ancient Kemet, and so forth. So the term ki in China, or chi meaning life force energy, that's a corruption of what we were already using before Asians came into existence. So when a martial artist uses chi energy to their hands and they can break a board or move something and so forth, that's ritual provocation. That's on a lower level, simply electromagnetic energy. You can put your hands close to your face and you can feel the heat coming forth from your hands and so forth. You can project that. You can expand that and intensify that projection. This is what's happening here. So they're provoking or projecting their energy, provoking the energy of the divinity, and then the response is the deity dispenses their energy to envelop the person, replenish the energy of the person and so forth, and realign them with divine order. No different than if if a child, as we say, an infant cries out to the mother, sound vibrations provokes the energy of the mother, and then she comes to the child and dispenses her milk to nourish and feed and immunize the child and so forth. The ritual provocation or prayer, which is a cry, are sound vibrations that move through space, hit the eardrums of the mother. It provokes or, prompts the mother into action. And then she responds by coming to the child and releasing energy. When we engage in ritual prayer, ritual chant, ritual song, or ritual movement to provoke or push the energy to the divinity, it provokes, just like if you push the lion, you're going to provoke a response. If you project your energy to a force in creation, you're going to provoke a response. And if you live in harmony with order, there's going to be an orderly dispensation or release of energy that replenishes your own spirit body and realigns you with order. That's what we engage in. So that's what's happening here. We show a few more instances of different forms and talismans that are used in the form of the Ankh shape, because it's a sacred shape, that shaft that goes up in the form of a loop and so forth. That shape itself is a powerful ritual talisman and so forth. So you see the sesheshet in the form of the Ankh, once again, around the neck of the sacred Ka'et. That's the term for cow in ancient Kemet, Ka'et. And that's a sacred animal totem, or Achinebwa for Het Heru. So you see Het Herus in the form of a sacred Ka'et or cow, and she has the Sesheshet, or so-called sistrum, but we call it Sesheshet, shaped in the form of an Ankh around the neck once again. It's a yonk or a yoke once again. This is the Sesheshet when they shake it and so forth, the ritual talisman. We see the Shenu or the Shin ring, and it includes the name of the individual. Here is Nefer Ka Ra. The top portion, the loop portion, is an extended version of the Ankh and so forth. That's a seal. So we show the different variations of, sacred talismanic structures in the form of the Ankh or the yonk or the yoke and so forth. Just a few more variations. We have the sacred ketem, or a seal, and we talk about the importance of the seal in ancient Kemet, in the, from municipal law purposes as well as spiritual, because the seal is the same as the name and so forth. The name is a seal that carries the energy of what you're going to do in this particular lifetime. So once again, you see that sacred seal on a rope structure in the form of an Ankh around the neck of the animated life form. So it takes the form of an Ankh and so forth, and it's around the neck in the form of a yoke. And we also show that the, Sesheshet, so-called sistrum, when they shake it and so forth, it sends out certain kinds of vibrations that repels negative spiritual entities and also draws in the kind of energy you need. And when you look at the larynx, the voice box and so forth, it takes on the same form. So we just put that in just so you can see, the relationship. So we're talking about true ritual. This is something that we've utilized for thousands of years. We still utilize the term Ankh. In the Ankhan tradition, we also use the Ankuaba itself in the Ankhan tradition. Let's look at that real quick. Well, first and foremost, now we have certain deities, male and female deities, who take on that title, and they have that function as well. So Ankh, the name of the divinity, Ankh, the son of Sapatit, misnomer Sothis, Osiris, Ankhet, or Ankhit, the living one, the name of a goddess, and that's actually the Akuaba. That's actually Nebuhet. In the appendix to this book, we talk about the female divinity, Nebuhet. When our Khan culture is called Akua, in ancient Kemet, she's called Nebuhet. In Yoruba, she's Agberu, the wife of Eshu, the trickster or the messenger. deity. His wife is Agberu, the load bearer. She has the basket on her head. In Kemet, she is Nebet-Het, the wife of Set. Set is the trickster and the messenger, and his wife is Nebet-Het, the one who has the vessel on her head. In Yoruba, Set, the trickster and the messenger, is called Eshu and also called Elegba, and his wife is Agberu, which literally means load bearer, the one with the vessel on the head. In Akan, she is called Akua. The trickster and the messenger is called Akua Nansi or Kwekua Nansi, and his wife is Akua, the one with the vessel on her head. So in all the traditions, the trickster or the messenger, Set in ancient Kemet, Eshu in Yoruba, Kwekua Nansi in Akan, and the wife of the trickster or the messenger is the one with the vessel on her head that carries the ritual offerings in that sacred vessel from us to the deities and the ancestral spirits and so forth. Nebet-Het, she has the vessel on her head. Eshu, the wife of Eshu is Agberu. Agberu literally means the load bearer, one who bears the load on her head. In Akan, Akua, the wife of the trickster messenger, one of her praise names, Kukua, literally means an earthen vessel. So it's the same cosmology across the board. But we go into a great deal of information here in this particular article, but the portion we want to look at is as Akua, she is the mother of the Akua Ba. Ba means child, and Akua is the divinity. Akua Ba is the child of Akua. She is the one that is the same as the Ankh. That is Ankhet, the goddess Ankhet. She's Akua in Ankh and so forth, and it's the same Ankh structure. We still use the Ankh today. There's a funerary function for the Ankh as well, just like there's a fertility function. And we also have the funerary form of the Akua that are placed on graves and so forth. So we have the fertility Akua and the funerary Akua. Just like in ancient Kemet, there's a fertility function for the Ankh, for fertility and pregnancy and everything else, but then there's a funerary function to enliven or vitalize the spirit of the deceased individual. In Akan, we use the Ankh for funerary purposes and fertility purposes. And we show that, and even when you turn the Akua Badals around and you look at the back of the head, as you see the back of the Akua Badal, you see that they have the Jed pillar on the back of the head and so forth. Just like sometimes they combine the Jed pillar with the 4 bars in the Ankh and ancient Kemet. The Akan people maintain that thousands of years later. When you go purchase an Ankh or an Akua Badal at a fair, when people from Ghana are selling their sculptures and so forth, and you turn that Akua Badal around, you'll see the Jed pillar on the back of the head. You'll also see the little ribbed portion of the neck and so forth, Jed pillar there as well. It's also important that the Ankh is also shown anthropomorphically with arms and hands. This is why in our Khan culture, they still have the Ankh, sometimes with the stylized version with no arms, or with no hands and no feet and so forth, just the Ankh structure, and sometimes the full body of the individual. This is Ankhet, the living one, the name of a goddess. That's Akua. These are the Yoruba women, load bearers, Agberu, the load bearer, the wife of, Eshu and so forth. Nebet-Het is called Urit Hekau, the great one of words of power or enchantments and so forth, ritual incantations, ritual speech. We have more anthropomorphic Ankhs, just so you can see they have arms and legs and sometimes even, hands and feet and so forth. And here's the other piece as well. In our Khan culture, the human being, our physical body is called Honam. Ehon means self and Enam means flesh. So the Honam is the flesh, Enam, self, Ehon. But the physical body is also called Onipadria. Onipadria. Onipa means human being. And Idriya means tree. So the physical body of the person is seen as a tree. We have a trunk, we have a head, we have the hair, which is the foliage, and the branches are the arms and legs and so forth. This is what the Ankh is representative of. It's representative of the Afurakani, Afuraikani human being who's rooted in earth, the earth mother and so forth, and who said is open to the heavens and so forth. That's what the Ankh literally is. Of course, the natural hair of the Afuraikani individual is the foliage of the trees and so forth. So we show all of that information, Unipadriya, and the linguistic information to prove that. And that's important. We put that forward. That's important because this misinformation about the Ankh represents the loop is the womb and the straight portion is the phallic symbol of the male, and it's the union of the male and female. That's never been true. That was something that was made up, especially like in the 90s, and people thought it sounded deep, so they started saying that, but that's never been accurate. But they were unaware that the Ankh was still being used by Akan people today, unbroken, for fertility purposes, funerary purposes, and it is representative of the full body of the Afurakani male and Afurakani female, African black male and female. Now, okay. And just so you see, when we mention, and we can get into this in a different podcast, but kara, anything round, staff, stick, roll, cylinder, is the origin of kakra. Originally, kakra or chakra simply means circle or wheel. And then they started associating spiritual potencies to that later when they corrupted our text. But the circle or wheel, kara, in ancient Kemet, anything round, staffs, cylinder, and so forth. But the root of kara is kar or kara, which means shrine or a sanctuary of a deity. And we go into detail about that. The term ki, also pronounced chi, means exalted one. Ki or chi, the winged disc. Ki or kai or chai, the exalted one, a title of Ra. So sometimes it's kai or chai, and sometimes it's ki or chi, the exalted one. The winged solar disc, the disc with the wings and so forth. You're talking about the solar disc, the solar fire energy that's winged, meaning it's an animate fire. The animated fire or the winged solar disc, the animated fire within you is your life force energy. A title of the life force energy is Ki, meaning the exalted one. That is a title of Ra. When he's operant through the solar disc, the winged solar disc, he's called Ki or Chi, the exalted one, the high one, the one up in the heavens and so forth, the fiery energy that envelops us all. Ki or Chi is the title of Ra. This is why in Japan, when they say Reiki means universal, Rei, and Ki, energy, Rei is a corruption of Ra. Even Europeans today, instead of saying Amen Ra, they would say Amun Rei. And the god Rei is the sun god, and sun rays, they'll say Rei instead of Ra. They've always mispronounced it. Same thing in Japan. Rei meaning universal, they're talking about Ra. Ki meaning life force energy, that's the title of Ra. So in Japan, they stole these terms from our ancestral language and co-opted them, pretending like it's theirs. Now, when we look in the Akan language, you see in ancient Kemet, kara, anything round, staff, stick, roller, cylinder. In Akan, kankra, a circle. We also have koro, the pot placed before the shrine of a deity. That koro is the same as kara, which is a shrine for a divinity in ancient Kemet. Hold on a second. Okay, now the second part of the book, and we're not going to get into that today. We can do that in a separate live, but we just want to prove that Ankh is the origin of the term yoga in this section. But the second part of the book is Kara Kasa, the origin and nature of the chakra. Once again, this when you see the human-headed bird, that's the Ba, the divine living energy, the spirit. So you have your spirit body, just like you have your physical body, you have your spirit body, and within your spirit body, you have a radiant force that permeates your entire physical body, just like when the sun shines and you pull in solar heated energy, and that solar fire within the oxygen permeates every cell in your body. The divine living energy, the life force energy of Ra and Ra'at surging through us, we call that Ba, the spirit, and Ba'et for women, the spirit. They'll show it as a human-headed bird, meaning it's an animate force within you and so forth. And here you see that Ba spirit with the jed pillar around the neck, and once again in the form of an Ankh, a yonk or yoke. So going from proving that Ankh is a yonk, Ankh is a yoke, and that's where the word comes from cosmologically and spiritually. Just to touch on this notion of the chakra, once again, we have kara kara, anything round, staff, stick, roll, or cylinder. Kara is the root, the shrine of the deity. So the original shrines that were circular shrines are actually the stars, planets, suns, moons. These are the original entities that came into being from the black substance of space. These original shrines, the stars and so forth, and later planets were infused with the energy of Ra and Ra'at. So therefore they became the first shrines. The first kara kara, the first circle, was the first kara, the first shrine. Now, we also have the term, in fact, before we touch on that, let's go back up real quick. In the Sanskrit sources, you have various versions, kakram, kakra, kaka, in Pali, kaka, kakra, various, dialectical variants of the term. Originally, it simply meant circle. That's all it meant. Kakra meant circle, karakara. Even circle in English comes from kirkle, karakaro. Originally, karakaro became karakol and kirkle and circle and so forth, but it was karakaro. That comes from karakara, which means a circle, stole it directly from our language. A spiritual center of power in the human body, from Sanskrit, kakra, which simply meant a circle or a wheel. And later on, they began to incorporate this notion of spiritual centers when they stole that from our cosmology as well. So originally in Sanskrit, kakra simply means a circle or a wheel. This is why karakara in ancient Kemet means a circle or a wheel or a cylinder. But for us, that circle, wheel, or cylinder, the root of it is kara, which means a shrine or a sanctuary of a deity. This is one of those shrines wherein the statue of a deity is placed. In Ankh, koro means a shrine of a deity as well. Here we talk about, in the text of Kemet, my hair is the hair of the god Nu, my face is the face of the god Ra, My eyes are the eyes of Heteru. My forearms of the goddess Neat. My backbone is the goddess Seket. My feet are the feet of the god Ptah. They list all the various parts of the body and how each part of the body is a shrine for a specific deity and sacred to a specific deity. Then the text says, there is no member of my body that is without an Ntorot, a god or goddess. Tuhuti, the deity of divine wisdom, shields my body all together, and I am like unto Ra every day. So this notion of different parts of the body are shrines for different deities that is laid out in the text of Kemet thousands of years before Hinduism or Buddhism existed. Now, the next piece, if you look at one of the books that became popular in the West, The Chakras by Ledbetter, written in 1927, one of the first books where they started introducing, Hinduism and different forms of Buddhism and so forth to the Western audience. And that's still one of their most popular books and so forth. When they're talking about what the chakras are, they say the Hindu books hint at rather than explain what happens when Kundalini, the serpent spirit at the base of the spine, rises up the channel through the Sushumna. They refer to the spine as Meru Danda, the rod of the god Meru, Meru Danda, the central axis of creation, presumably of the body, in that they say there is this channel called Sushumna, which is basically the physical spine, and inside of that is an energy spine they call Sushumna. Within that is another called Vajrini, and within that, again, a third called Chitrini. They're talking about energy within the spine, and which is as fine as a spider's thread. And then they say, upon that, upon the spine, are threaded the chakras, like knots on a bamboo rod. So they're talking about the physical spine. Inside of that is a shaft of energy. And along that spine, going up from the base to the top, are the chakras are threaded along the energy spine like knots on a bamboo rod. Okay. When they say the spine is called Meru Danda, the rod Danda of the god Meru in India, this is the god Menu. Sometimes he's called Amen Men, sometimes he's simply Menu. Menu was corrupted into Meru in India. He has the sacred crown and the little red ribbon that goes from the head all the way down to the base. He is the central axis of creation. His crown, whether you see the golden crown with the red ribbon or the skull cap type crown with the feathers and the ribbon going down, that is actually physiologically the central nervous system, the central axis of the body, the brain, and the spinal column. Amen Men, the deity that governs the brain and the spinal column and so forth, that is verified in Akan culture because one of the words for brain in Akan is Amemini, Amemini, named after the deity Amen Men who governs the brain and the spinal column. That's the rod of Meru. That's the Meru Danda, the rod Danda of the real god Menu, which is corrupted into Meru. The term, this is not pronounced thus, it's pronounced kas, knot, tie, ligature, backbone, vertebrae, spine. And you see the little symbol here and here for the spine. So that's kas. In Coptic is pronounced kas. It means knot, but also vertebrae, backbone, spine. Then what do we say in the text of Kemet, thousands of years before Hinduism? The 7 magical knots, Kasu 7, that protected a man. So we have 7 knots, Kasu, but the word Kasu also means spine, also means vertebrae, also means knots. And there are 7 magical knots, KASU, spine, KASU, vertebrae, KASU, that are magical, that protected a man. Then the KASU 7 are the 7 deities who assisted at the judgment and condemnation of the wicked. These are the 7 KASU deities, the knot deities or the spine deities that govern the 7 KASU, the 7 magical knots that protect the spirit of the person. And then we show the other definitions of Kas, like chamber room, sarcophagus, funerary coffer, Kas, meaning master or chief, Kasit, lady or chieftainess. And then statements, charms, spells, orders, commands, ritual saying, charm, spell, incantation, statement, all of that. And then lawmakers, arrangers, disposers, managers. So these 7 KASU are also 7 lawmakers, 7 ritual spirits of ritual incantation, ritual spell, ritual incantation, and so forth. They're also governors and so forth. And then finally, KASU means to lift up, to raise, to rise, and so forth. So when you talk about the rising of Kundalini up the spine, there are 7 knots that are governed by 7 KASU deities that are arrangers, managers, regulators of divine law, and so forth. Now you're seeing the unfolding of the 7 knots along the spine that are energy centers that are governed by 7 deities and so forth, all within the cosmology of Kemet thousands of years ago. And physiologically, the spinal nerve ganglia and plexuses, meaning the bunches of nerves that go into 7 knots of nerves, the spinal nerve ganglia are literally the 7 KASU, the 7 knots along KASU, along the spine or vertebrae, KASU, governed by 7 deities, KASU, that govern the spiritual body of the person and protect the person. So we have the 7 knots physiologically, and they're called 7 knots in ancient Kemet. But we go further than that. In chapter 71 of the Pert Imheru, so-called Book of the Dead, Book of Coming Forth by Day, over 3,600 years ago, there's a ritual invocation to these 7 deities. OU 7 KASU, translated in English as knots, the arms of the balance on that night of suffering, night of setting the sacred eye in order, who cut off heads, who sever necks, who take away hearts, who make a slaughter in the island of fire. I know you, I know your names. May you know me just as I know your name. So he's saying, I know you 7 deities and I know what your names are. I'm going to invoke you by name to provoke your energy so you can protect me just like you protected the spiritual body of Al-Sar when he transitioned. I want you to protect my spirit body now that I've transitioned into the spirit realm. I want to be protected as an ancestral spirit so I'm not pulled off track, so I can live in harmony with the ancestresses and ancestors in the Sekhet Hetep, divine field of peace. And since he knows the names of the divinities and invokes them, he says, if I reach you, may you reach me. If you live through me, may I live through you. May you make me to flourish with what is in your hands, the staff, the spine which is in your grasp. May you destine me to life annually. May you grant to me many years of life over and above my years of life, many days over and above my days of life, many nights over and above my nights of life until I depart. May I rise to be a likeness of myself. May my breath be at my nose. May my eyes see in the company with those who are on the horizon, talking about the ancestral spirits who are the illuminated ones near the sun, on that day of dooming the robber. So may I rise, you're talking about the rising of the quote unquote Kundalini, which is really Ra and Ra'et, to be a likeness of myself. May my breath be at my nose. May my eyes see in the company of those who are on the horizon. So when you stimulate the energy of Ra and Ra'et through ritual invocation and these 7 deities, the energy rises. You breathe through the nose to stimulate that rising energy, and then you open your eyes. May my eyes see in the company of those who are on the horizon, the ancestral spirits, talking about the ritual implication of ritual breathing, stimulating the energy that surges up and rises up to the top of the head, and then the opening of the quote unquote third eye. So these seven chakra, the energy, the placement, and the ritual associations of the seven knots along the spine, seven deities that govern the spine, ritual invocations to these seven deities, all incorporated in ritual and ancient command. And then you go to the ancient pyramid text, this pyramid text of Unas that you see right here, utterance 318 through 321. And what does it say about the Pera, so-called Pharaoh Unas? They say, and you find this in the pyramid text of Teti as well, same text. It says, Unas is the now snake, the leading bull, who has swallowed his seven aratu. What is an aratu? This is an arat, a cobra with a solar radiant disc on the head, plural aratu. So Unas, he's like the now snake. He's the leading bull. He's swallowed his seven aratu, seven solar cobras with solar discs on their heads. And so his seven neck vertebrae came into being, who give orders to his seven posjatu to hear the words of the king. So the king swallows seven sacred cobras with seven solar discs on their heads, and then his seven neck vertebrae come into being, his seven cervical vertebrae come into being. This is in the oldest religious text in existence, the pyramid text, where we're talking about someone swallowing radiant discs in the form of sacred cobras and the seven cervical vertebrae coming into being within his spirit body. Hinduism didn't exist yet. Hindus didn't exist yet. Asians weren't existing yet. We were already dealing with this for thousands of years. And when they talk about the seven posjatu in that text that we just read, posjat means a group of deities, a certain collection of divinities. They say the three companies of the gods, the great gods of heaven, earth, and the duat, and so forth. But the other definition of posjat is important. It means backbone vertebrae. And you see the symbol of the backbone of the vertebrae here, but it's also spelled with the reared serpent. Another spelling of posjat means to shine, to illuminate. The reared serpent, once again, in a solar disk with the rays coming out. So when they talk about the seven cervical vertebrae coming into being after he swallows these seven cobras with the radiant discs on their heads and so forth, and gives birth to the seven posjatu. Posjat is backbone vertebrae. You see it spelled with a reared serpent, the symbol of the vertebrae, and the circle with the dot in the middle, which is the solar disk. So all together in one term is a reared serpent, a spine, and solar fire. When they talk about the Kundalini energy at the base and rising up, a reared serpent, rising up the spine with the solar energy and so forth, all of that is contained in the term posjat. And then once again, you have the Chasu seven, the seven divine masters of wisdom who helped Tahuti, the deity of divine wisdom, to plan the universe. Their names are Neferhat. It's actually Aper Pehui. This is a typo. It's not Nefer Pehui, it's Aper Pehui. Neb Desharu, Ka, Bak, Kek, and Sai. And there's a ritual invocation to these seven deities. These are the seven deities that govern the seven knots along the spine. And once again, OU seven knots of Kasu of Mehet, Orit, and so forth. They are children of the goddess Mehit, Orit, and Tahuti. Those two give birth to those seven spirits that govern the seven energy centers along the spine and so forth, the knots along the spine. And they, as children of Tahuti and Mehit, Urat, they assist Tahuti in managing and organizing the world. Just like they assist Tahuti, the god of wisdom, in organizing and managing your spirit body. But first, they were the seven centers that organize the entire universe. On a microcosmic level, they're the seven deities that organize those seven centers within your body. Okay. So, all right, so that is the information we wanted to share with you all tonight or today. Again, all of that information, and we have a special going on right now. This is in our book, ODWIRASEM. Those who came later, we have our 600-page book. Is 8.5 by 11, as you can see. It's 600 pages, full colors, an encyclopedia-sized volume. 12 of the books I have published, we included in this volume. And the covers are on the back. And one of them is the book, Ankh, the Origin of the Term Yoga, right here. And that is included. Now we have the updated version. So we released that text a number of years ago, but since we've been back and forth to ancient Kemet on research tours and so forth, you know, this is the book we were just going through. So last year in the spring, we revised and expanded the book, Ankh, the Origin of the Term Yoga, we were just looking at, and we incorporated new information and so forth, and that is included in the book. So this book, we have it on Amazon, but we also have it on our website. Amazon takes 60% off the top of all booksellers. So that's why you have, when booksellers have their books on Amazon, it's a little bit more expensive on Amazon because Amazon takes 60% off the top. So as we always say, if you had a book that you were selling is $10, you said, I'm going to put it on Amazon to sell. When you sell it and someone pays $10, Amazon is going to take $6, and then they're going to give you $4 minus the cost of printing. So this is the reason why, you know, the books are a little bit more expensive on Amazon, but when you purchase it directly from the website of a bookseller, of an author, we can offer it for a cheaper rate. So if you look here, the link on the screen, we have a special for our subscribers. Those of you, check out our channel and so forth. Number one is an automatic 30% discount. So let's go to the link right quick. And there's also the special, you can split your payment into 4. So you can order it right now for $13. You can place the order for $13. And then when you choose Afterpay at checkout, and you can split that up. So you can pay $13 today. And then the next couple of weeks you pay $13, and then a couple $13 payments, and you'll be done. Instead of paying the full $44 plus shipping today, you can just place the order right now for $13. So let me show you how you can do that. Hold on 1 second. And when you do that, you're not only, of course, you're going to get a text that has information that others don't have. Hold on 1 second. Okay, let me do it this way. You have information that others don't have. We include a number of our books, even the Kuku Tuntum, the Ancestral Jurisdiction. That particular book shows that Jesus never existed, Muhammad never existed, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Solomon, Sheba, Menelik never existed, Yahweh never existed, Buddha, Brahman, and so forth. All these characters are fictional cartoon characters who never existed. And we show their origins and how they were manufactured and created by corrupting the language and culture of ancient Kemet and manufacturing these fictional characters. We just did a live yesterday on how Buddha is a corruption of the great god Ptah in ancient Kemet, and that comes from our book Kuku Tuntum, which is included in this volume. So when you go to the link, the Odwirafo square link that you see on the screen, you'll see this right here. Scroll down, and you'll see our ODWIRASEM book. And you will see it's $44 plus $8 shipping. And again, it's 600 pages, 8.5 by 11. We made it an encyclopedia-sized book, full color, because we just needed that information. We needed you to see the full color of these images from ancient Kamiti, Kemet, and others and so forth. So we put a lot of effort into that. Most people, if you print in black and white, we could have dropped the price to like $20. But when you print in color, you know, they charge you a lot of money to print in color. The prices are ridiculous, but this is just the way it is. So, but we wanted to print in color so you can see the vivid colors of these ancient deities and so forth. So you can see here when you purchase, if you go now, click now, you can choose Afterpay at checkout, and you can split your payment into 4 payments of $13. And so that's what you'll see there. Now, also, today, as a matter of fact, today, we mentioned this a little bit earlier. We have a course where we certify you to become a meditation instructor. It's called Susu. This is the course right here. The next 4-week online course begins today. And it's a 4-week online course. At the end of the 4 weeks, you receive your professional credentials certification. You can use that to conduct meditation sessions and get paid for that. And corporations, schools, human services organizations, cultural organizations, they bring you out. They typically pay between $100 to $200 for you to conduct a 30-minute session where you introduce yourself, talk about what you're going to do, take the people through a 10, 15-minute meditation session, and then have a discussion afterwards. That half an hour, you know, formula. Typically, most organizations will pay $100 to $200. Corporations will pay between $300 and $500 for you to conduct a session like that. We have certified almost 60 people in the past year and a half, all over the country and in different parts of the world. Black people, of course, only, but in the Netherlands, in different parts of Europe, on the continent of Afrika, as well as in North America. So this is a way for you to become entrepreneurial while empowering our people at the same time. So we're starting the next 4-week course tonight at 8. We also have the archive version. So if you can't meet every Tuesday night at 8 for the next 4 weeks and you want to do the archive version, you can do that. The archive version is 50% off from the live version. So you can do that. We have a down payment option of $49, and then you can pay that monthly fee. So for example, the archive version is $199. So 4 payments of $49 will cover that. So you can start off $49 and you pay monthly over time. But typically what happens is within the first month, you're finished within a month, you have your certification, you get your first gig. We just got an email from one of our students. He finished the Susu, course. He received his certification and he sent an email saying, hey, I got my first gig and I'm going to be conducting these meditation sessions here. And they were paying like $200. So within the first session, his entire course was paid for. And if they bring you out once a week or once every other week or once a month, and you have a couple of places like a school and a business and a human services organization throughout the course of the week, you can make $600-700 a week just by conducting meditation sessions that empower our people and reduce anxiety and reduce stress and focus discipline and rebalance hormones and assist with weight loss and overcoming addictions and all these kinds of things. It's beneficial for our people, tangible benefits, but you can also generate income as an entrepreneur. So that next live course starts tonight at 8. So if you want to sign up for that, you can do so. If you want to do the down payment option, it's $49 for down payment. The book downloads are free. If you want to do the archived version, and that's a study at your own pace, we'll send you the entire 4-week course, all the book downloads, all the article downloads and so forth. You'll take your time and go through all the different sessions for the whole 4 weeks. And then when you're ready, you reach out to us, we set up a Zoom session, and then we go through everything to make sure everything is clear. And once we do that entire review and so forth, then we'll submit your certificate. You'll be certified. It's a professional credential that can be used, corporate settings, not-for-profit settings and so forth, anywhere it can be used in this country and outside this country. and then you can start generating income right away. So if you want to sign up for that, same link right here. And one other thing we have on the same page, we mentioned earlier the Medut Nsoro. That means the divine words or symbols. That's our 2-part course on reading and writing the language and script hieroglyphs of ancient Kemet. The part 1 is 6 weeks, a 6-week course. It's archived, so it's self-study. Part 2 is a 6-week course. And what it was there's a 271-page book called Let the Ancestors Speak. It's a very detailed book on the grammar and language of Kemet. And we go through that text. It took us 12 weeks to go through the text. So part 1 here, the archive course, is the first 6 weeks. We go through the first half of the book and the second portion. In fact, let me show you this real quick. Just so you can see the book itself that we're talking about. This is the book right here. Let the Ancestors Speak, written by one of our elders who is now an ancestor. But this is a 271-page text. You get that ebook version as part of the course. And that's the book that we go into details, very, well-structured text. And we go through that full 271-page book. The first class was 6 weeks. The second class was 6 weeks. And self-study, you go through it. And, you learn the language and culture of Kemet and so forth. And we also give more information than an Egyptologist would, because we can compare the languages of contemporary Afurakafuraikai, which we have done, and show the same words with the same meanings and the same deities that we invoke and engage with today and deal with spirit possession and so forth today in the languages of Afurakafuraikai today, including the Hoodoo tradition in North America, the same deities from ancient Kemet. So it's still a living tradition. We can bring that nuanced understanding that the average Egyptologist teaching the course can't bring you. We put this course forward because we saw that people were teaching courses on the reading and writing the language, but they were charging $300-400 for a course. Our course is only $15 for part 1, $15 for part 2. And if you want to take both of them, purchase both of them at the same time, as a bundle, a discount is $20 for both of them. So we try to make our stuff affordable. Okay. So any questions on any of that before we log out? You can post them in the chat room. But one thing with regard to the book as well as the courses, when you purchase the book, you're going to get, of course, great information, but it's also assisting us. We're working on part 2 of our documentary on Hoodoo, which is our Khan ancestral religion in North America. We released part 1 of that full documentary. It's on our webpage and so forth. In fact, you'll see that right here. This is the Hoodoo documentary. So, but we are working on part 2, and we are aiming to finish it by the end of February, by the end of Black Trustery Month. We would like to have a pre-screening during Black Trustery Month. So whenever you purchase a book or purchase a class and so forth, you're assisting us to finish the funding portion of that so we can complete our film and go into post-production and complete that film and release it on time and so forth. So any purchase assists us in that process. So we appreciate that. We appreciate the people who over the past couple of days have purchased the book, and they like the information, and they've purchased books for their family members to realign them and get them back on track and so forth. So when you look at the book and you see all 12 books that are part of this anthology, it's transformative. So, okay, so just want to make sure we didn't miss anything. All right. Okay, so Yedase, we thank you all for tuning in and supporting the work. If you want to join in on the meditation instructor certification course, Susu is the ancient term for meditation. The live course starts tonight at 8 p.m. So you can register right now and get on that. Of course, it's open to Black people only. We teach our people and certify our people only. So if you'd like to join in, you can join in right now. You can register right now on the site. If you want the archived version, you can access the archived version on the site as well and just study at your own pace. So, Yedase, we thank you once again for tuning in. And Yebeshiabio, we will meet again. That's it.